Thank you for attending this webinar on strategies to find foreign buyers and partners. I'm your moderator, Jenny Alton from the New York Small Business Development Center Central Office. This webinar is hosted by the International Trade Department of NYSBDC. Today, we have a great lineup of presenters for you, including our own Dr. Mercedes Sanchez-Moore, NYSBDC Director of International Trade. We have John Tracy, International Trade Specialist with the Syracuse office of the U.S. Commercial Service, and we have Kathryn Bamberger, International Trade Specialist with Global New York. So you know we are recording today. We will share links to a PDF copy of the slides and the recording in a follow-up email. Attendees are muted and will not be on camera. Your chats will only be visible to me and our presenters. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box. You can open Zoom's Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom window by pressing the Q&A button. We will hold questions until the end of the presentations today. So it's very important that if you do have those questions as we go along, put them in there, and then we will answer them during that Q&A session at the end. You're going to receive a lot of information today, so we highly recommend that you contact your local SBDC for no-cost, high-quality assistance in identifying what your particular next steps would be in regard to today's topic. I will put some more information in the chat about all of this coming up, and I will turn the time now over to Mercedes.
Thanks. The General Program, the New York SBDC, is a partnership of the U.S. Small Business Administration, SUNY, the City University of New York State, higher education institutions, and the private sector. The main services that we provide are one-to-one consulting, training, and research, and we support entrepreneurship and economic development for the state of New York. We cover statewide the needs of small and medium-sized businesses. We do have 20 regional centers and 72 outreach and satellite offices. 98% of the New York population is within 30 minutes of one of our services locations, so it's very easy for you to obtain services. Just go to the closest location and state exactly what you need. If it's international trade, or you're looking for access to financing, or you want to put together a business plan. The New York International Trade Initiative, the New York SBDC, provides international trade and trade compliance, and we are the only agency that is publicly able to provide importing assistance. We do also do export development. As I said before, we do one-to-one client counseling. We have training every month. We are also able, we have very good market research capabilities. And the best thing is that we partner with the people that you see here on the screen: Global New York, the U.S. Department of Commerce, Commercial Service, the SBA, EXIM, and many private institutions. All of our services are free, customized, and 100% confidential. So we mainly specialize on providing technical assistance for you, as well as access to financing. And that is why the SBDC and what the SBDC is better known for. So you are new to export, we will do export readiness reviews and assist you executing and putting together an export business plan. We will help you target international markets, also selecting sales and distribution channels, logistics, and documentation. We will try to address your legal considerations by making referrals to our network. And we provide market research, trade statistics, and as I said, international trade financing. And with that, this is my contact information. Either you can contact me directly or go to the closest location to you if you are interested in international trade. I'm going to start my presentation on market entry strategy. This presentation is based actually on a book from James Foley called The Global Entrepreneur, Taking Your Business International. And I done this because we are also assisting many counselors and individuals and students that are trying to obtain the Certified Global Business Professional Accreditation. So the goal of this presentation is to assist entrepreneurs learn about the different market entry strategies and also provide materials for study for those studying for the certifications, the CGBP and the SBA International Trade Intermediate Certification. My colleagues, John Tracy and Kathryn Bamberger, have the ability to find foreign representatives for you, which I don't, but they will be the ones addressing that topic. My topic is going to be focused on the market entry strategy. In my agenda, I will provide short definitions of these strategies and also the type of export partners that you will find in each, the advantages, disadvantages, and the globalization stage of the company that is advisable to use in each of these modes. And then I will show you a chart that it will help you very easily compare the market entry modes. And secondarily, I will also talk about market risk that you need to be aware of, but it's going to be a very brief also definition and also some mitigation techniques and another chart that will also be very helpful to visualize this. As you can see, there are many ways to enter foreign markets. The main two buckets are indirect exporting and direct exporting, and under these two big categories are many other, and this is only just some. This is not all inclusive, and I will be dedicating one slide to each of these categories. That's why I'm not gonna go through it. Now, you will select the mode by balancing cost, benefits, and the risk associated with it. And it's very advisable that you get enough information to evaluate what is your position, how much money do you want to spend, how, if you already have the knowledge, and if you don't have the knowledge, which it would be the most appropriate, etc. Indirect exporting involves a domestic third party. You don't need to know a thing about exporting to engage in indirect exporting because your domestic partner will take care of everything. It will coordinate the entry, and it will also assume all the risk involved with exporting. The three forms that are common in indirect exporting are using export management companies, export trading companies, and piggyback partners. Here you see a brief description of each. An export management company is a strategic partner that functions very much like your outsourced export department. They do not commercialize products that are competing, and they establish closer partnerships with the businesses that they represent overseas. And as I said, acting as dedicated export department for the clients. They can take title of the goods, some other take a commission as an agent of the exporter, or participate in profit sharing or taking a down payment or things of that sort. They will take care of market research, distribution, logistics, and sometimes they will even offer financing for their clients. An export trading company is similar somehow to the export management company, but they participate in this for its own account. They are buyers and sellers of the product that they acquire, and they participate in both importing and exporting activities. Some of them might engage in doing customer services, but not so engaged normally as the export management company will do. Then a piggyback partner is a domestic company that is already successful in international markets and is willing to buy your product and take it with them. So what you are doing is piggybacking on their success. And the most suitable partners for this arrangement are manufacturers that have complementary products for you. I work, for example, with a manufacturer of tire repair kits, and they found a manufacturer of bicycles that were already having international sales, and that was a perfect match, the bicycle with the tire repair kit. So that was one of the piggyback arrangements that I have seen happening. Now I'm going to talk about the benefits and disadvantages of indirect exporting. As a benefit, you don't need to know a thing about exporting or have any experience. It is a very fast way of entering a foreign market. Also, the costs are very reduced. You don't have to make an initial financial commitment for start to export. And there is very low risk associated for you because you are getting paid here in the domestic market, being the United States. The disadvantages, you don't have any control about what happened with your international sales and you don't make any market decisions. The domestic partner is the one taking over all this decision making and you don't get any customer feedback. You don't know who is the end consumer, if you need to make any sort of modifications to your product to be more successful or nothing of that kind. And also you have to share the profit margins with the other representatives. So the gains are a little bit lower as expectable because there is a third party involved. Now I'm going to speak about direct exporting. And the difference with indirect exporting is that the intermediary is in the foreign market. There is no one acting as your representative in the domestic market, okay? It's in the foreign market. Firms might have their own export departments, or sometimes they use different sorts of export intermediaries to reach the foreign market. The common forms, as you can see here, is direct to consumer in e-commerce, sell agents and distributors, foreign direct investment with different categories, licensing and franchising. And as I said, this is not an exhaustive list. There are many forms of doing this. Also, many people, what they do is to combine several forms together. They just don't use one single strategy. Well, the good news right now with the internet and e-commerce that has been incredibly booming, you have platforms that you can use to either, B2B to reach other businesses or B2C to reach end consumers. Platforms like Alibaba, Etsy, and Amazon are very useful for this. You have the potential to reach a very large target audience and you avoid costs associated with intermediaries because you are shipping and selling directly. It's very suitable for small dollar value transactions with individual consumers. And what you need is an international globalized website with the capacity to appeal to different cultures, maybe translated to different languages, having knowledge of suitable payment methods to get paid through your website, and the ability to flag and comply with the regulations, the export control regulations, and the documentary requirements for the export transaction, and ability to fulfill and ship orders. I am not going to talk a lot about agents or distributors because that is a topic that John Tracy is going to cover in the next presentation. Just to let you know, it's an independent contractor that normally gets paid a commission per sale, and they don't take title of the goods. So typically, the manufacturer will be the one shipping directly to the customer. They might not know what the customer is because there is a contract to avoid for you to know that. To contact them directly, because the agent will be the person in charge of that. And the sales invoice goes from the exporter to the foreign buyer. Many times, an agent or broker will represent several manufacturers at the time and sometimes competing products. Distributors, on the other hand, will take title. They will purchase the goods from the manufacturers. And they have a greater ability to provide after sales and do marketing. They also will not let you know who the final consumer is. The invoice will go to them directly. So you will invoice the distributor, you will receive the order from them, invoice them, and then the distributor will invoice the retailer or the final end consumer. Indirect investment, the company makes a larger commitment to invest in entering that market, and it is riskier than any other strategies. And as I said before, it can be combined with other forms of exporting. The common forms of foreign direct investment are selling offices, distribution, manufacturing, and joint ventures. The pros and cons of foreign direct investment are several. Sometimes there are many incentives, tax abatements to attract foreign direct investment in every country has that. And there are some other countries that do not like any foreigners to own their businesses there. There are several key reasons why companies pursue foreign direct investment. Many times there are barriers to exporting, like super high tariffs. And you see that in the automobile, for example. You have every single automobile manufacturer here in the States to avoid that tariff that is sometimes up to 35%, or they need to have increased control over the distribution in the market, in the foreign market, and they also want to acquire higher amount of feedback from the customers. It also provides having an investment in the country where you are selling, provides access to foreign resources. And then, as I said, there are increased risk and also responsibilities to engage in this type of a strategy. A sales and market office is a branch office established in the foreign country that conducts the marketing and selling functions. The exporter sells directly from their domestic market through their export department, and they just ship to their branch office. And the cost of relocating an employee to another country sometimes can be very substantial. So this market entry provides greater control and also very good market feedback for the company that they could learn and they can adjust their strategy. Many companies start with a sales office before doing any sort of larger investment to enter. Overseas distribution, the firm purchases a warehouse or either contracts with a third-party logistic and outsource portion of the supply chain. The place that is best known for doing this is the port of Antwerp in the Netherlands. You could see warehouse after warehouse after warehouse, and people can either purchase the capacity in the warehouse or they can just contract it out. You will establish manufacturing when there are lower costs, producing the goods there to reach your customers, and it's called offshoring. And we know all about this. So very many manufacturers in the US started opening factories or either contracting manufacturing or renting the space to manufacture mostly in China. Now you can see that in Mexico, and it's called nearshoring. In overseas manufacturing, you could own the entire facility, and it's called a subsidiary. And it gives you the full control of manufacturing processes as well as profits. You don't have to share with anyone, but it is the riskiest. And also, you really need to invest quite a bit of funds to have a subsidiary overseas and be able to run it successfully. The other option is to have contract manufacturing, which you just, have subcontractor in the country where you are trying to sell in the foreign market. And it implies lower cost and less risk than any other form of overseas manufacturing. Another FDI option is a joint venture that is actually partnering with a local business in the foreign market that you're trying to enter. And it can be complex, but also very advantageous because the local market the local partner will have market knowledge, will also have connections, will have manufacturing know-how or other advantage for you. Normally the domestic company is the one that finance this type, or it could be share finance, but normally the domestic company is the one that puts the financial means. And the disadvantage to partner with a local firm is that you lose control because now you share it with your partner. You also share the profits with that company, and you have to be careful who you choose because it depends on the reputation of the other partner. You might raise the reputation of your own brand if it's not adequate or this company does some sort of business that you don't agree with. Licensing is another form of direct exporting in which a company that has some intellectual property that is valuable is able to have a contract and exchange it for a fee or royalty. Normally, it's a transfer of technology, of patented formulas, copyright materials, trademark, trade secrets, or any other sort of IP. And they give the licensee, which is the foreign company, the rights to produce and or sell these products in the foreign country. There are benefits and risks for both the licensor and the licensee. The foreign licensee takes on the cost and risk of investing in manufacturing facilities and marketing, selling, and delivering the goods. And the licensor, the benefits are the low cost entry to sometimes a market that it could be not accessible to them. And they have a return on the investment in the form of royalty, usually based on a unit produced and sold. Franchising is a form of licensing, as I said, in which the whole business model is licensed in exchange for fees, royalties, or other forms of payment. I'm sure you are more acquainted with franchising. Think about Starbucks, think about McDonald's, think about Burger King, etc. Those are franchises. The foreign client purchases the rights to use the intellectual property and sell the products or services that have been proven to constitute a successful business model. So the advantages are a very rapid expansion for the domestic business. Also, they will acquire local knowledge and expertise very fast. They share the risk between the franchisor and the franchisee, and they can build brand recognition very quickly through this type of agreement. The disadvantages, of course, you have to share the control. You lost the control. The franchisee, is the one that takes control over the operation. So you cannot even control the quality of the service or the products or how things are done, because that's not up to you. And then you need to have a good attorney and really draft the contract properly, so you don't find yourself in a lot of legal and regulatory issues because you are conducting business in another country that might not have the same legal system than yours, which is the case normally. These are, in general, the advantages and disadvantages of direct exporting. As I have said before, the benefit is that you have direct control in the majority of the cases in regards to exporting. It provides very good feedback for you to learn about the market, about customers, about what they want, etc. And you also can gain excellent market knowledge that will allow you to make decisions if to further invest, increase, or either you need to adjust your strategy. The disadvantages of direct exporting is that it requires a much greater investment from your part than any of the other indirect exporting forms. And the time to market might be longer because you are partnering with a foreign representative or intermediary. It also involves higher risk than indirect exporting because you had to make a larger financial commitment. This is a very nice chart that is being offered here with the permission from its creator, James Foley, and it allows you to compare the advantages, disadvantages, and the globalization stage on each mode. I already have highlighted the advantages and disadvantages, so I really would like you to concentrate here in the stage of the firming globalization. Indirect exporting is highly recommended for companies that have never exported and are in the earliest stage. They don't want to commit funding and they don't know much about exporting. They also can attempt to do direct exporting, but they need to go through the learning curve, of course, and also have a larger investment commitment. It could be in earlier stages, or it could be they decide to do this when the company is more mature, in a mature stage of exporting. FDI should be attended by people who know what they're doing. They already have the market developed and they want to have a larger investment and are in the maturing stage of exporting. Same thing with the different forms. Foreign manufacturing, foreign sales and distribution, mature firm with a strong international experience. Now for licensing, depends on the industry of the market. As long as you have IP to license, you could be a novice if that IP is very valuable. For a joint venture strategic alliance, again, it depends on the industry of the market and might be earlier or mature stages. As I said earlier, I wanted to make you aware that there are risks that are associated with every entry mode. And in general, every foreign country is going to have country risk. And these are made up of risk of loss caused by adverse political, economic, legal, or financial situations. Unfortunately, political violence is far too frequent, and we see too much of that for my liking. And it provides the risk of damaging tangible assets or being very interrupting for businesses and influencing also the foreign buyer's ability to pay. Sometimes there are political violence, government might intervene in times of turmoil, and they will expropriate, which means taking over the ownership of foreign assets of people who have invested in that particular country. They might also impose tight exchange controls or pledge their currency to another currency to avoid devaluations and all kinds of artificial ways of controlling currency, which are not very good news. They might also increase audits and certifications as a way, as I said, it's a trade barrier actually, what they're trying to do. Economic risk are created by microeconomic developments that raise the cost of doing business beyond the profitability and the ability to repay the debt. Sometimes, the worst that can happen is the collapse of an economy. Normally, political violence and economic risk can come very close together. And also the mismanagement, as I was saying, of currency and transferability. Now, the good news, there are ways to mitigate this risk. And the best known is using credit insurance from the Exim Bank because they will cover political and economic risk, both apart from commercial. There are also private insurance corporations. And if you want to learn more about this topic or the name of this insurer, please just send me a message and I will be very happy to let you know. This business actually is an $8 billion, the insurance business for political and economic risk. So it's very often that companies request the insurance, and you should actually, if you're trying to do business in a country where you know that there are some risk, some political or economic risk. One thing that I would like to advise, if you want to learn about the country risk associated to the market that you are going to ship, please consult Euromonitor. They have a passport section, and they do provide an overview of all the country risk associated. Also, the country commercial guides of the U.S. Department of Commerce Commercial Service. That would be also a very good way to evaluate what are the risks associated with entering that market. Continue with the list, and not to scare you. There are, of course, legal risks because you are doing business in another country that have different laws than the United States very frequently. And that country might have a different way of protecting intellectual property or respecting it. The advice is to check foreign contract and national laws and get the advice of an attorney to let you know if they're going to be, what are the regulatory obligations that you need to meet. Also, of course, you need to learn about the export regulations of the United States before you attempt to do anything overseas. Then commercial risk, which is also includes credit risk, refers to non-payment of a company by a foreign buyer due to insolvency, bankruptcy, or unwillingness to pay. And this is unfortunately the risk that happens more often. It depends on the credit worthiness of the buyer. There could be a default, a credit squeeze in the country. The good news, there are many ways of avoiding the risk of not being paid. As I said before, you can use the Exim Bank for that reason, the credit insurance, but also you should learn about the different methods of payment, because if you request cash in advance or use letters of credit, you are much more protected from a buyer not actually failing to pay your invoice. in regards to foreign exchange risk, every time that you are doing business that involves two different currencies, you're going to have this type of risk because there are fluctuations. Currencies change against the other every minute, or could remain. I mean, nobody can really predict this. There are different types of foreign exchange risks, including the FX economic risk. The seller might become not competitive because of long-term fluctuations due to political and economic violence that might be happening in that particular country at the time. Then the transaction risk, this is the exchange rate could fluctuate, as I said, between the seller and the buyer currency, resulting in a loss in a particular transaction for one of the parties. And the translation risk applies to multinationals that have different subsidiaries in different countries. Is the loss resulting from restating the values of the assets and liabilities in their accounting. And this is a very practical chart created by James Foley that allows you to see how risk increases going from indirect exporting to direct exporting modes. And as you can see here, political risk is very difficult. I mean, that is inherent in every country. You cannot take it out, but you can mitigate it with insurance. And then once you start with direct export sales, if the currency is denominated in the seller's home country, the United States, let's say we denominate in dollars, then you are going to have less risk than in any other scenarios. If you are denominating the currency of the buyer, now you're going to have transactional risk added to that. Also, with foreign direct investment, as you can see, the risk is going up and up and up. If you are going to open a branch office, you have less risk that if you try to establish manufacturing and you staff your branch office with your own people as well. So, any case, as I said, please, this was a very short overview. If you want to learn more about these topics, email me. I will be very happy to send you more information or to answer your questions. And now I'm going to pass my presentation to one of my partners, John Tracy, that is going to talk to us about the ways that his department can find foreign representatives for you, and also everything that is associated with the relation, the contract, and etc. Oh, something else that I wanted to add. We are going to have a webinar on importing, on the basic step of importing next month. So please be aware and check your email and our social media for that. And the following in July will be on the country of Mexico. And thank you so much for your attention. And I pass my presentation to John. Thank you.
So first of all, thank you for having me, both Jenny and Mercedes. I appreciate the invitation to join this webinar, one in a series. I know that two of my colleagues presented on the previous webinar of this series, and I'm glad to take a little deeper dive on one of the topics that they touched upon during their presentation. So you can, I know Mercedes is sharing the links to the previous recorded webinars. So if you want to look at further information about this topic, this very broad topic of exporting, then take a look at that webinar as well. So today I was asked to specifically speak about strategies to find foreign buyers and partners. So I'm going to actually necessarily overlap some of the content that my colleagues covered in the last webinar. I'm not so much that it's going to be redundant. So I promise you I only stole a little content there because it's relevant to this conversation, because they did touch upon this topic. So, you know, we talk about why exporting, and this is just a good way to warm up to get into to dive in deeper to the topic. But one of the things that I think is the most compelling argument to me from a business perspective is that the second to last bullet down here, that exporting enables companies to diversify their portfolios and weather changes in the marketplace. You know, if the domestic market goes soft for whatever reason, and it could be because of the the low cost of the dollar. It could be because of local domestic competition, whatever the reason. Oftentimes, if you have an international presence, then conditions, market conditions are otherwise in other markets. So if the dollar's weak, that also makes U.S. products more affordable to our foreign buyers. So that would be an opportunity to weather the storm of economic changes here domestically if you are doing business in other countries where your products may still be competitive. And then this last bullet here is interesting too, that nearly 3/4 of exporters have fewer than 20 employees. And this is more of an encouragement comment. You know, a lot of companies I meet with and talk to about exporting, they just don't feel like they're big enough to compete on the global playing field, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. So don't disqualify yourself because you don't think you have the resources or are a big enough player to be playing on the global stage. And this slide is really interesting to me because when we talk about trade as a percentage of GDP globally, U.S. is always far behind. And there's some reasons that justify that. One of them being the U.S. is the most lucrative market on the planet at the moment. They're the most wealthy per capita GDP. So the market is really strong here domestically. So of course, our manufacturers and suppliers of services are focused domestically, more so than some other countries. And of course, if you lived in a smaller European country in the greater EU, that trade kind of looks similar to what our interstate trade is in the US. So, you know, if you're in France, you're likely selling to your immediate neighbor Spain to the south because of the geography and the accessibility to those markets. So yes, I would expect the United States percentage of GDP that's exported to be less than a country in Europe. However, and also when you look at all the other markets that are listed here on this map, we have room to improve our exports, and we tend to be insular, and we need to be a little bit more global, I think, we collectively. This is a footprint of our resources. The U.S. Commercial Service is a small group in the United States International Trade Administration of the Department of Commerce, which is a huge federal organization of maybe 80,000 employees. U.S. Commercial Service is about 2,000 employees, and half of us roughly are here domestically in the United States, dispersed across the country in UCX or U.S. Export Assistance Centers. And then the other half are our colleagues that are stationed at our U.S. embassies and U.S. consulates around the planet. So we're in about 75, 80 countries at the moment. The U.S. embassies are in the capitals of those countries, and if it's a large market where we have multiple offices in other cities other than the capital of the country, then those would be the consulates. So we have a pretty good footprint to give you eyes and ears in those markets, and we'll get into more details as we continue here about what kind of resources and programs we have through those channels. So this is just a generic slide, and this slide is, as Mercedes said at the beginning, or Jenny said at the beginning, this presentation is going to be available to all the participants. There's a lot of content in here, and in many cases I have active links in here. So this slide I leave in here just because I think it's a good way to reorient yourself after attending one of these webinars to see, okay, this is the whole menu of services that they get into. But we're going to talk about some of these bullets here as we proceed. But it's a nice slide, a reference slide, I guess I would call it. And then when we're talking about export strategy, we're talking about, you know, what countries are we interested in selling our products to? And once we decide what countries we're going to sell into, how are we going to engage with those markets, the sales channels or the distribution channels, or the supply chain we often use for describing the structure of a market. So that all comes into play once we've determined a target market, then we start strategizing how we're going to engage with that market. And then, of course, you may have products that aren't a good fit for a foreign market. So which products of yours are good for the export markets? And that may be dictated by the different energy platforms that they use. You know, in some countries, 60 megahertz versus 50 megahertz for electric motors is dominant. So you have to either modify your product or decide not to sell your product into that market if it doesn't fit with their power structure, power grid. So Mercedes got into this, a deep dive into this, and that was some interesting charts to see the different methods and channels to funnel your sales into each market. And a lot of times this is dictated by, you know, that previous slide where I said, you know, we're talking about how to determine which markets look like a good fit for us, and then we have to decide what the sales channel or distribution channels look like, and that's going to dictate how you approach that market, whether you're going to employ a sales rep or you need to engage a little further with a distribution partner that's actually going to buy and resell your product with a presence there that can do after sales support. These are all considerations that you're forced to consider when you're discussing how you're going to sell and market your products in a foreign country. So where can I find free market intelligence? And this is in trying to answer, you know, what markets should I target? What countries should I try to sell into? Oh, this is a great place to start. And this is from our trade.gov website. And you can see the URL there in the slide. And this is just a drop-down menu for US businesses. And you can see all of the options here. There's so much content in this website at trade.gov. I encourage you to bookmark it. And you'll also see as we continue through these slides that there's I've provided a lot of links to other trade.gov sections. But the website's so vast and so good that I encourage people to access it. But it's also the downside of the website because it's really so large that it's sometimes hard or intimidating to try to find, not intimidating, that's not the right word. Sometimes it's just challenging to find what you're looking for in here. And it's probably in there if it's trade related, but finding it can sometimes be a challenge. So I encourage anybody to call or email me anytime that you're trying to find something. I can be, by virtue of the fact that I'm in here more frequently than the average person, I could probably help speed up the rate at which you find what you're looking for. So I'm going to be referencing back to this website and content that you'll find underneath these tabs as we proceed further. No, shoot, that, sorry. All right, I can't read the top of this, but I don't need to. This is just more links to, again, resources that we're going to talk about, but research by country. Mercedes mentioned our country commercial guides, which I think are a great encyclopedic reference to a market. It's a great place to start. It gives you data on natural resources. It gives you information on best prospects for U.S. industries at the time, their banking structure, their political structure, travel advisories, common documentation required for transactions to be imported into their country, i.e. exports from the U.S. into that country. What documents are you going to need to present with your freight to get it cleared through customs in a foreign country? And that would be where you would find, you know, if it has a specific certificate of origin format that you need, that would be all listed in the documentation section of that. But these country commercial guides are just a great place to start. The other place that I encourage people, if I get a call from someone that says, you know, I just don't know even where I can market my products, I often say that go to the lowest hanging fruit. Any country that we have a free trade agreement is going to be much more friendly and market entry much more easy. by virtue of those free trade agreements. Those free trade agreements are intended to reduce tariff barriers. It doesn't mean that your products are necessarily going to be free into that market, but it's going to be, your products are going to be enjoy lower tariff rates than competing countries. And often case the intellectual property protection is addressed in those free trade agreements, and documentation is streamlined. So there's a lot of reasons why looking at the 20 or so countries that we have free trade agreements is not a bad place to start with your export development plans, because it just eases entry when you are negotiating with buyers from a country that we have a foreign trade agreement with. The other, I mentioned before, the special documentation requirements that pop up often are imposed by the free trade agreements, and that would be a specific format for your country of origin. And they are usually asking you to affirm that the ways that you are claiming country of origin from the US. And that is a little bit more extra work sometimes, especially if you have products that are comprised of components that are sourced outside of the US, but you're doing, and you're assembling them and re-exporting them, then you have to declare that on these country of origin declarations going into countries that we have free trade agreements with. And as long as you can defend that, you're going to be fine. And most often when I have that conversation with companies, by the time we've added in the design, the overhead, the production additions in value, and marketing costs, all that sort of stuff, the value of US input usually exceeds that 50% threshold that's usually required, even though they're sourcing a lot of components from foreign sources. Again, you can see this is for industry research, and just kind of going back to that other slide, it's trade.gov/industries, and then you can just search by industries and look at opportunities, international opportunities for US products and by industry. There's these two interesting tools that follow here, the market diversification tool and the global market finder. You're going to need your HS code, which is your harmonized tariff system code, or harmonized system code, which is your, most who are importers are familiar with it. Then 10-digit code that's used to describe your product when you're clearing it through customs on the import side. We also use the Schedule B, which is a subset of the HS code on the export side to report the export transaction, but you need that 10-digit code. Well, maybe not the whole 10-digit, but you need at least the first 6 digits to use these tools. I haven't been in there. I don't know if it requires full 10 digits, but if you only have the first 6, add 4 zeros at the end of it, and you should be fine to proceed. And you know, this is basically using trade statistics to determine where you might have a market for your products. One of these, the Global Market Finder specifically tells you where the biggest export markets are for your HS code or your products using your HS code. And some may use that information differently. You may decide, well, if the biggest market for my type of products is Germany, then I know I have way too much competition in Germany, and I want to avoid that market and look at a market where they're importing very little of this product, but they have market potential by virtue of some other subset of data or industry research that you've done that have encouraged you to look at this other market. So that data can be used in 2 different ways. It's the biggest market for that widget. So yes, I know there's a market there for it, or it's the biggest market for that widget. So I'm going to avoid that one, avoid the competition there and look elsewhere. But again, these are just tools. You're gathering information and you're trying to come up with, you know, the full set of 200 countries around the planet. From that, I want to distill down what my target markets are going to be. So using these tools will help you through the process of elimination, distill down what your sort list of target countries are going to be focus your efforts. And then we have at trade.gov how to export videos. I mean, there's how to fill in the blank, how to what documentation. We just did one on documentation. We've got an Incoterms one. We've got one on how to qualify and verify targets. There's all sorts of how to export videos, and that's a common or a popular way for we as a population to get our information. You know, I often, when I'm trying to fix something on my boat, will go right to YouTube and type in what I'm trying to do. And sure enough, there's a video tutorial on how to do it. Same thing with trade. There is so much content out there that it's really easy to gain knowledge quickly and on demand through those channels. So trade.gov is one place that houses such content, but not the only place, of course. So here's I'm going to use this slide to prompt me to talk about a couple of our programs and resources. Some of these are fee-based, and anytime we have a fee-based service, they're heavily subsidized by the government. And in many cases, we can point you back to New York State, who has the STEP grant program that helps offset the cost of some of our services that I'm describing here. So anytime we're talking about this, I'll remind you that you need to talk to Kathryn or one of her colleagues about what you're eligible for to get reimbursement. It's not 100% reimbursement or 100% payment of our services, but it offsets the cost of them to help encourage you to use these services. And I'm sure Kathryn will mention the STEP grants when she speaks after me. I'm not going to do this in order necessarily. I'm going to start with our international partner search, and that's where you fill out a questionnaire for us. And on that questionnaire, you're prompted to describe the details of your company, of course, a lot of autobiographical information. And one of the more important boxes that we look at on that application is the place where you describe how you're currently marketing your products, both domestically and if you're selling internationally, how you're doing that. And we take this questionnaire and I send it to the target market of your choice. So say you decided to avoid Germany because it's from that trade stats, you determine that that's the most popular market for your class of products. You're not going to go to Germany. You're going to go to, let's say, Brazil. You're going to describe for us how, like I said, how you market and distribute your products, what you're looking for in the Brazilian market. And it may be a distribution partner who can purchase and resell your products. And that there's many reasons why you would choose that, as Mercedes got into. And you also want them to be able to provide after-sales installation and after-sales warranty, repair support, that kind of stuff. Whatever it is you define for us on that questionnaire. And I send it to my colleagues in Brazil and ask them to affirm, number one, that they agree that there's a market potential for your product. And then if that's an affirmative, then they will offer to conduct an international partner search using your search criteria to find candidates that fit your description. These companies that they're vetting have to also respond affirmatively that they're interested in talking to the U.S. company about entering into a relationship. And they also have to pass our vetting. They have to be a known business with a known business history. So as part of this process of us finding candidates, we're also vetting them for you. So what results from the international partner search is a short list of companies that we've identified that meet your search criteria, that we have screened to be viable businesses that have expressed an interest in talking to you about a potential business relationship. The Gold Key service is an extension of that. So the international partner search, you get a list of companies that are pre-screened, pre-qualified. Gold Key service takes it one step further and invites you to Brazil to meet with these companies in person. And my colleagues around the planet, despite the differences in culture, all say that the Gold Key service is our most effective service because it gets people meeting face-to-face in the same room, across the table from each other, to talk about a business relationship. So the international partner search is one method. The Gold Key service takes it one step further. If you're willing to travel to that market, my colleagues will set up business meetings with each one of those pre-screened candidates. And then thirdly, the initial market check. And this is kind of a reverse order, but what this initial market check was born out of the International Partner Search and Gold Key service, because what we do at the beginning of the process of an International Partner Search and Gold Key service is an initial market check. And that's an assessment of the market to affirm again that market potential exists for your products. So after years of providing international partner searches and Gold Key services, we decided to break out the initial market check, the first step of the International Partner Search and Gold Key service, for companies that weren't sure if they were ready to engage in an international partner search, or haven't refined their search criteria enough, but they just want to first get an assessment of the market. So we broke this first component out of those other two services and offer it to companies now, and it's at, of course, a significant discount. So I should mention the fees for this right now, that for small to medium-sized enterprises, which are, not to oversimplify the definition, but roughly most companies less than 500 employees qualify as small to medium-sized enterprises. There's some asterisks to that, and you can look it up in the SBA definition. But if you're a small to medium-sized enterprise, the cost for an international partner search is $750. For a Gold Key is $950. The initial market check is $350. If you're a larger company, over 500 employees, then the rates step up. But most of us, I think, probably on this call, if I were to guess, are qualify as small to medium-sized enterprises. And then here on this page, before we continue, we have the international company profile, which is a background check. So you could go to a trade show and meet somebody that says they can market your products in Poland. They say all the right things. They have a slick website. They look like a good partner. But before you want to jump in with both feet, you want to do your due diligence. And so you can employ us to do a background check on this, on a company. My biggest customers for this are the military, defense, and security products. So Lockheed Martin, for example, is a customer of these. So before they jump in with both feet, it's all their products they export are licensed, subject to license control. And before they jump in with both feet, they ask us to do a international company profile as part of their due diligence practices. So it may be, the international company profile may be overkill for someone that's just selling consumer goods. So there are other means by which we can help vet potential partners that don't involve a formal service and fee for that. So usually if someone calls me and says, I'm talking to this company, before I send my first shipment, I just want to know if you know anything about them. I'll email my colleagues in that market and say, hey, this company says they're going to start buying stuff from the U.S. company. Do you know these guys? Does the address look good? Any red flags? That sort of thing. So oftentimes, informally, we can help you vet potential candidates in foreign markets. And then lastly here, the single company promotion is just like it sounds. I use the same example, and I'm going to have to come up with a better example, or not a better, a different example for future webinars and seminars, because I use this one so often that my colleagues that I co-present with are probably sick of hearing it, but it's just a great example of it. But we have a company here in Central New York that does runway resurfacing. Think of the driveway sealants you put on tarmac driveways every spring. It's a system where they power wash the surface and get off all the rubber that's been deposited from airplanes touching down. They clean off the surface, then they recoat it, and then they restripe it. They got into the business as being in the striping painting business. So they started marketing their products internationally, and they got a contract in Guatemala for the airport from the Ministry of Interior or whoever the approving official is. But it was a government contract, and they were refabricating refabbing or resurfacing the airport runway to extend its life, which replacing the runway was estimated at $60 million, and they came in for under $5 million and resurfaced and extended the life of the runway another 10 or 15 years before they had to dig it up and pour concrete again. So that was the selling point. But in order to do that contract, they had to ship these large machines. They're giant trucks with vacuum and pressure washing systems on them and stuff. So they had to send them down there and they had to commit to it. And the expense to ship all their machinery down there to do the job meant that it wasn't affordable to bring them back. So if they were sending them down there, they were gambling that they were going to get additional work. So they sent them down there and then asked us to do a single company promotion that we hosted at the embassy in Guatemala. And we invited neighboring countries to send their ministers of interior, ministers of transportation, whoever's in charge of the airports in that country, to come and see a demonstration of what they were doing in Guatemala. So it was a captive audience of pre-screened government officials with decision-making authority in their countries for airport maintenance, infrastructure improvements and maintenance. And it was very effective. And that equipment never returned back to the US. They just kind of hopscotched down Latin America. And the last I checked in with them, they were in northern South America. I think they'd made it as far as Brazil. That equipment had just been doing projects all over that region of Latin America down to Central America down to northern South America. So they definitely gambled the right way, and we helped them find an audience to ensure that they didn't have to return the equipment back to the US. So that's an example of the single company promotion. Trade missions and trade shows are a great way to market your products. Trade wins we do every year. The current trade wins is just ending, or is it it's going on now? It was in May, and that's to Turkey and Europe and Eurasia. So that it kicked off in Turkey. Everybody flew to Turkey that participated in the trade mission, and then they got to choose a second. They got to pick up to two other markets of their choice in Europe and Eurasia, and we were sending delegates that were scattering after the 3 days of matchmaking events in Turkey. They were then going off to the market of their choice after the fact, and that's not industry specific. That's it's a kind of a broad net, but it's not a bad place for someone who doesn't have a lot of experience doing international marketing, that is just getting into it, that wants to go with a group and have some assistance in setting up matchmaking opportunities. So it's something to consider. And you can see that I put the link in there about trade wins. The next one is going to be in South America. I think it's not posted yet, but I think that's what I heard was 2025, they're going to do trade wins in South America. And then trade missions, there's an aerospace and defense trade mission that is in process that I think is going to happen this summer. I know the rail and port to sub-Saharan Africa is going to happen in August because I'm a part of that team. But trade missions are being developed all the time for industry sectors and or geographic sectors. I participated in a trade mission to Southeast Asia a number of years ago. We went to Singapore. All the companies went to Singapore, and then they chose a second market of their choice. I ended up following a health tech company to Vietnam, and then some of the other companies went to Malaysia and Indonesia. Singapore is on the Malaysian peninsula, so that wasn't hard travel. I can't think of where else. Korea, I think, is where one of the companies went to. So that's just an example of a geographic one. We wanted to take companies to Southeast Asia. And so that's just an example of a geographic one as opposed to an industry sector one. But there's trade missions and trade events happening all the time that are an interesting way to market your products. And a lot of the companies that went on that one I mentioned Southeastern Asia were companies that were already doing business in that region but wanted to expand their business. So they built that trade mission around visits to their existing distribution network, and then we assisted them with gold key services in other markets to identify new distribution partners in adjacent markets. The Advocacy Center is down in DC, and they're part of our group, and they specialize in assisting U.S. companies that are bidding on foreign procurement projects. And it doesn't have to be a foreign government project, but it has to be foreign government funded project, one or the other. And what we do is first you have to apply for it. It's free, but we are essentially assisting you in increasing the visibility of your products as a solution to a government procurement need. So advocacy can take many different forms, and it can be done from as low. I mean, what we do as the U.S. Commercial Services, commercial advocacy all day long, I'd argue. But this is more political advocacy, where we're leveraging our political context, the State Department's, the political tip of the spear, if you will. The ambassador at the U.S. Embassy to that country is a State Department advocate, and we're asking officials in those high-ranking positions to advocate in special ways to give visibility to the U.S. solutions to those products. Where it becomes a little diluted is if there's multiple U.S. companies that are bidding on the same project, and then we step back and just advocate for a U.S. solution to the opportunity. But in cases, it's most strong, I'd argue, where it's only one U.S. company that's bidding on it, and then we are digging into all of our relationships and our investments and our connections in those countries to help increase the visibility of the U.S. Products for that procurement. Contract considerations. When Mercedes and I were talking before we had this presentation, this is one of the things that she threw out as a possible topic to cover. And I have to first say the disclaimer that I'm not an attorney. I don't pretend to be one, and nothing I'm saying should be considered legal advice. But what I am going to say here is stuff that I heard from attorneys who will not be named. So if you want to follow up on any of these topics, you should consult your legal resources. But the first thing that I recall that I take away from conversations that I have with attorneys about international contracts is that they're necessarily complicated, because you have the U.S. company on the domestic side, and then you have your buyer who's in the destination country. So those are two separate legal regimes entirely. And then you have a third level of international law in the form of treaties and foreign trade agreements that affect how your domestic law obligations and your customer's destination law landscape affects the transaction and your contracts that you're entering into. So this is more a comment that, yeah, it's different and it's more complex for these reasons. So you have to think about these things when you are entering into agreements with your buyers. That doesn't mean to say that you can't come to an agreement, that agreements or viable contracts cannot be obtained. That's not true at all. You can certainly get there, but these are the things that you have to think about when you're talking to somebody. And one of the pieces of advice I've heard repeatedly from attorneys is that a lot of times you're inclined as a U.S. company to build in your dispute settlement section of your contract to read all disputes will be settled in U.S. courts of law under U.S. law. And there's a lot of reasons why that's not in your favor, although you might think it is. And one of them is that a domestic, a U.S. Legal ruling is often not enforceable outside of the U.S. You take it to your partner in Italy, and the Italian court's going to say, well, that's not even based on our law. We're not going to help you enforce this. So they often recommend an arbitration clause. And arbitrators, it's usually a panel of three. You get to a point when your buyer gets to appoint one, and then a third one is appointed by those two. And it's where they hear, they're usually trade people that have experience in international trade to become arbitrators. And they hear the details of the dispute, and they come to a conclusion, and you're bound by that. Both you and your partner to the contract are bound by that. And it's also enforceable in many countries around the world that agree to uphold arbitration awards. So you might be much better off going the arbitration route than demanding that any dispute settlements can be done here in the U.S. because it's for those reasons that I mentioned. The other thing that came up, this was about 15 years ago, maybe. I remember this was all the buzz about termination clauses, and that the European countries in general were, it was very difficult to terminate an agreement with an agent or distributor or salesperson that you've entered into an agreement with, implied or otherwise. And this was a big scare tactic that was, I should say a scare tactic, but everybody had a lot of anxiety about this and kept hearing these awful stories of, an underperforming sales agent that they employed that they now can't fire because of some rules that the European country imposes on them. And I think a lot of that I think a lot of that got over exaggerated, but it does raise the point. You want to have some clear definition of what your expectations are of the person or company that you're entering into an agreement with. So, a lot of companies I talk to say, well, I just right out the bat, I just deny any request for exclusivity. Well, that's one way to go, but it might not be the most creative. Maybe you can give them exclusivity, but give it to them with conditions. And that gives you a way of changing tack if the relationship doesn't go the way that you expect it to. This is a slide from our trade.gov again on e-commerce. I'm not going to go down the e-commerce rabbit hole, but it is a way that a lot of people are marketing their products. And this is a number of subcategories that you can see here without reading you the slide. It takes a deep dive in all sorts of things about e-commerce and how you can use that to your advantage for marketing your products internationally. This is a slide I stole from my colleagues from that last webinar, one of many that are on here, but this is one I wanted to include for your reference to call back to. But this is another place to look for potential distribution channels, other registries of industry groups in foreign countries. And with the way that we search the internet these days, this is right at our fingertips. And even more ways, look what your competitors are doing, how they're selling their products and where they're selling their products. News, of course, you can scan. Compass is a prescription service that you can use. Data Mine and Panjiva, the same. You can buy data, which is essentially what you're kind of doing with these. And of course, trade show attendees list. You can reach out to the trade show organizer and ask. Most often, they will sell you the list of exhibitors or exhibitors and attendees that came to the show. So you have very targeted marketing, something that's so easy to obtain. I mean, you're going to have to pay for it likely, but we're talking probably a couple $100. And this was a marketing suggestion that I heard, or example that I heard from someone years ago. And I just remembered it when I was putting these slides together. And the Hobie Cat strategy, I just named it. I coined the phrase. So it's using a product that you complement as a means to find distribution channels. So in this scenario that was described, it was a colleague on the West Coast who had a wetsuit company that was trying to break into the water sports industry sector. And wetsuits, of course, everybody thinks of scuba diving, but wetsuits are very popular for surfers and small boat sailors. So he went to the Hobie Cat website and found Hobie Cat's international list of international distributors. And he said, well, anybody who rides a Hobie Cat and is going to get wet and probably wouldn't mind considering buying a wetsuit top. So instantly they had a potential distribution list for products that would complement sales of Hobie kits. So it's just just another example of how you might think about how to distribute and market your products. In this slide, again, I'm not going to read this to you, but it's common red flags when you are evaluating new potential business partners. And usually this starts with someone that's contacted you on the US side. They've seen your website and they want to enter into a business relationship of some sort. But if any of these things pop up, doesn't mean that they're not a legitimate inquiry. But if more than one of these pop up, then I would start digging a little deeper before you commit to sending a full container load of your products to a first-time buyer. And this comes back full circle to reaching out to our office to see if we can help vet the candidate, help you identify if there's any more of these red flags that exist. And we have done that, and they're fascinating when you have a US company that is so close to entering into a business relationship, even when there's multiple red flags present. And I even worked with a company at length with my colleagues in multiple countries to try to vet an inquiry to purchase his company in the US here. This is a very well-educated, successful person who was trying to retire, and he wanted to sell his business. And someone was offering him a deal that couldn't, that sounded too good to be true. And we helped verify that the inquiries were coming from invalid addresses and phone numbers from out of the country that they said they were working out of. There were so many red flags. I'm not even going to get into it because I don't want to give away proprietary information that could be linked to this company, because they didn't give me approval to talk about the details of this. But I will tell you, after telling him that there were so many red flags, that we recommended he cease conversation with this presumed company that was trying to buy him. We left him with that information. He said, "You're right. This sounds fishy in multiple ways." So he agreed with us. I found out like 6 months later that he continued his dialogue with the company and ended up sending him $25,000 or $30,000 as some kind of secure payment to facilitate the purchase of his company, which doesn't make any sense either. So I can just tell you, using this example, that don't ignore the red flags at your own peril. So like I said, I'm not reading all these to you, but I have this slide in here you can resort back to. So that's what I wanted to say about this topic. I mean, it's a topic we could go on forever, and I unfortunately went on forever, so I apologize for that. Let me stop sharing. Get back to the screen here. It's time. Oh no, actually, I have to turn you over to my colleague Kathryn Bamberger, who's going to talk about a lot of complementary services. We try to work together all the time, and they have a lot of services that do complement what we're doing. So it doesn't matter if you remember to call Kathryn or me or Mercedes. We will all share information and cross-refer companies as needed, depending on the services required.
Yes, thank you, John, and thank you everyone for sticking with us. I know we're coming up on the end of our time together, but I did want to just mention that thanks to Jenny and her ever efficient manner of posting all of the links of previous webinars in the chat, you'll see that there is one that is specific to food and beverage, one that is specific to Global New York's STEP program, which is one of our grant programs, and trade financing. Also, just wanted to chat a little bit about finding a partner. You know, obviously, the better you can describe your company, your products, and your ideal potential partner or importer, once you've determined which strategy, market entry strategy you'd like to pursue, in addition to the folks who work at the embassies around the world, New York State also contracts with people who are in the countries that you're targeting and offer a similar kind of service where they will provide market information and potential partners for you to interview and to vet. And that service is typically offered at no charge, but in limited numbers of markets. Currently, we are between contracts, but typically our offices are located in Mexico, Canada, in Europe, in China, in India, in Africa, and South America. So some of those particular offices may be changing in the advent of a new contract. And we are typically able to provide those services, as I mentioned, free of charge. Currently, that is still our where we don't have opportunities to use our folks, we actually refer back to the commercial service as they have a wider reach. We do have 2 grant programs, which we've talked about. In addition to the STEP grant, we have the Global New York Fund. Both of those are currently also on pause. However, I encourage you, because that's a very short-term condition, I do encourage you to contact your local SBDC, who can loop us in, or certainly visit the website that I've posted in the chat, where you can find your local Global New York representative as well. Or again, you're welcome to contact me. In addition to what Global New York offers, if your product has at least 51% US agricultural content, you're subject to availability of a US Department of Agriculture funded program, which offers, again, a similar service, but specific to food and beverage products. And that is found at foodexport.org. And again, there's a recording of the webinar talking more about those programs and services. So with just a few minutes left, Jenny, I think you wanted to facilitate some questions and answers. And Mercedes, John, and I are happy to chime in.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And John, I know some people are wanting your contact information. If you are able to share that in the chat, that would be wonderful. We do have Kathryn's and Mercedes's. I'm just making sure we have them both. Yes, we do. We have both of those emails in the chat if you would like to get in touch with any of our presenters after the presentation today. So one question that we did have come in was about frozen foods and the ability to export frozen foods. So if we could have those of you who deal with this chime in on that, I would love to get this person some information.
I can start. Obviously, there are a lot of products that are restricted, but actually fewer than you would think. So frozen foods absolutely is eligible for exporting. Regarding which programs and services you might be eligible for, it does depend on your product content. It is, shipping frozen is more expensive than shipping dry goods. And John can probably weigh in a little bit more on that. But yes, that is definitely an eligible export product. And, obviously we're happy to offer some guidance and advice.
Yeah, the added expense is because you have to ship in a refrigerated container. So to ship a refrigerated container is more expensive than just a dry standard container. So that's what Kathryn's referring to. But not prohibitively expensive. We have lots of success stories of exporters of frozen food products globally.
Yes. In fact, there is a company out of New York that for a period of time was shipping ice cream out of New York to Singapore, which defies all kinds of logic. At the time, dairy products were not necessarily prevalent in a lot of Asian markets. It's frozen, it's expensive, it's obviously very perishable, and yet for several years that was a very productive relationship.
And to add to that, Kathryn, you're going to agree when I say this, I remind you of this. That's an interesting case study in packaging differences in foreign markets. And, we sell ice cream in the big half-gallon things. That's the quantity I always buy because I know it's not going to last long. But in European markets, for example, they don't have the same freezer and refrigerator space. And also sweets like dairy sweets like ice creams are consumed in smaller quantities. And so they had to make smaller pint-sized packaging, and then they had to do single serving cups, like the ones that I remember getting in grade school, and they had a wooden spoon attached to it, and very popular in other markets that they were targeting, like in Asia, and also to the airlines who are selling it on their to their first class. I don't get ice cream in my flights, so it must be first class passengers getting all that stuff. But it was just a fascinating thing because they had to change the production line to accommodate the different packaging sizes that were demanded in the foreign markets.
Yep. And then the other story that we have in history was there was a bagel shop that was buying bagel products out of a Brooklyn organization, and they changed some of the flavor profiles to be more appropriate for that market. And they were selling, if you don't know how to make bagels, they get parboiled first and then they get baked. And so they were selling frozen parboiled bagel dough that would then be baked on site. So there are lots of different ways to approach it and to work with your clients on the other end. But that's part of the sales process, is figuring out which method is going to work best.
And I just wanted to add to John's comments, and I know that the drinks also in Europe are much smaller in size. I could not believe, that here you will have like half a gallon Coke or something like that. that I never saw that before in Spain, where I come from, so yes, you have to be careful and adapt to market. You always need to do your research for that.
All right. Thank you for answering that. And we did have another question about reposting all of the panelists' contact info. So I have dropped that in the chat. Make sure to go grab those email addresses if you want to get in touch with any of our panelists that we have had today. And for just a moment, I'll while you get anything out of the chat that you need, I will say thank you so much to Mercedes and to John and to Kathryn. I appreciate all of you sharing so much knowledge today. And please do remember that we are going to get you slides so that you will be able to review. I know it was a lot. So we will have slides for you to review. We will have the recording. You will get those in a follow-up email in the next few days. We also we have an evaluation at the end of this webinar. If you have a few minutes to give us feedback, we do always appreciate that, and your ideas on what else you would like to see in our webinars here at the NYSBDC. So Mercedes, anything you would like to say?
I just encourage them to contact us. As John said, it doesn't really matter who they will contact, because if we will refer people, we work together. Kathryn and I work very closely and do co-counseling. And then we do know what are the services and the strengths of each of their partners. So again, please contact us. We are here to help, that this is the message that I want them to have. And if there is any other topic or any theme in the presentations that they would like to learn more, we have a ton of resources as well to provide further information.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Jenny. You are always wonderful.
It's my pleasure. And thank you to all of you for attending today. And we wish you a lovely rest of your day. Bye-bye all.
Bye.